There are images that remain locked away for decades, buried under digital encryption or classified by silence, not because we aren't ready to see them, but because those who took them were never ready to explain. Join us on the enigmatic journey of why. As we delve into another mystery surrounding James Webb Telescope leaks terrifying new image of 3I/Atlas. And what if I told you that one of those images just leaked? That the James Webb Space Telescope, humanity's most powerful eye pointed into the abyss, has captured something so strange, so utterly unexplainable, that it never even made it to a press release. Instead, it was buried, hidden inside corrupted files and metadata dumps, only to be discovered by accident. The object in question? 3I/Atlas. What was once dismissed as just another comet has now become a full-blown enigma. It moves too precisely, reflects too much light, alters space around it. And now, thanks to a leaked JWST infrared image, we're starting to understand why. Because this isn't just a rock. This isn't even just a visitor. This might be a message in disguise. And NASA? They are no longer in control. When 3I/Atlas was first logged by automated sky surveys, astronomers expected it to follow the usual narrative: icy nucleus, bright coma, long tail pushed by the solar wind. But from the very beginning, something felt wrong. Its velocity was off, not just fast, but precise. Instead of erratic movement through the Oort cloud or Kuiper belt debris, this object pierced through our solar system like a threaded needle approaching at nearly 130,000 miles per hour. As telescopes across the world turned toward it, the inconsistencies piled up. Its tail didn't react to solar radiation as expected. Instead of being pushed away from the sun, the tail curved inward, toward it. That inversion alone sent theorists into a spiral because it implied one of two things: either the physics we know doesn't apply to this object, or it's being manipulated. Spectral analysis revealed something even stranger: a lack of expected outgassing. Comets vent material as they heat up, creating visible jets of gas and dust. But 3I/Atlas appeared inert. No ice sublimation, no gas clouds, only a faint consistent signature of metallic particulate matter being released in evenly spaced intervals. This wasn't chaotic erosion. It was controlled discharge, like a machine shedding heat or recalibrating. The more we looked, the less it looked like nature, and the more it looked like engineering. Then came the moment that changed everything: a leak. Buried in a secondary folder within the James Webb Telescope's cloud archive, an anonymous data miner uncovered an image tagged with an internal NASA code, JWST SCN 3IA77L1. At first glance, the image was confusing: a grainy infrared composite of deep space. But once processed, a distinct hexagonal structure emerged at the center of the frame, embedded within the object we knew as 3I/Atlas. Its geometry was too perfect, its angles too uniform to be accidental. The reflective symmetry of the pattern suggested paneling, possibly like solar arrays or heat radiators. Experts who reviewed the leak in private forums described it as unmistakably artificial. And once the image started circulating across encrypted servers and dark research communities, it was too late. NASA could no longer pretend it didn't exist. But their silence was deafening. No comment, no statement, no press update. Webb's imaging logs for that day were under revision, and several JWST engineers who had been active on public channels suddenly went offline. One Reddit astronomer who claimed to have verified the metadata was banned site-wide, and a backup of the image was scrubbed from multiple mirror servers within hours. It wasn't just a leak, it was a containment breach. The kind that reveals more by what's hidden than by what's seen. Now let's talk about movement. Most interstellar objects, like Oumuamua, wander. They come from nowhere, pass through, and vanish again. Their paths are chaotic, unpredictable, carved by chance in eons of drifting. But 3I/Atlas didn't wander. It followed a course, a trajectory that, when mapped, revealed an unsettling pattern. Not just one planetary flyby, but three: Mars, then Earth, then Jupiter, in that exact sequence, each with calculated proximity, as if the object were sampling gravitational fields, almost like it was scanning or listening. Astrophysicists noticed something even stranger. At each flyby, observatories recorded temporary anomalies in magnetosphere data, brief disruptions like something electromagnetic had pulsed through the region. And with each pass, its speed didn't decrease as it should have. Instead, it maintained momentum, even gaining velocity after slingshotting around Jupiter, then vanishing behind the Sun. But just before it disappeared, Webb snapped its final frame, one that, when enhanced, showed something eerie, a pulse of light emanating from the object, not in visible wavelengths, but in structured near-infrared bursts, pulses spaced in Fibonacci sequences. This was no comet, this was a transmission. And we had just been scanned. With the leaked image, structured pulses, and non-natural trajectory combined, one conclusion began forming in the minds of those willing to say the quiet part out loud. 3I Atlas might not be an object. It might be a probe, a scout, something launched, perhaps centuries or millennia ago, from an unknown civilization, not with the goal of contact, but of observation, a way of collecting data, passing through multiple systems, and silently transmitting information back to its origin. This theory gained momentum when several SETI researchers compared the infrared signal pattern to previous unsolved anomalies like the WOW signal and the Lorimer burst. Though not identical, there were enough mathematical consistencies to suggest a shared method of encoding. What if 3I Atlas wasn't just a visitor? What if it was part of a network? A long-range information web deployed by a civilization advanced enough to hide its devices in plain sight, behind the mask of comets and asteroids? And if this is just one of many, then the real question becomes, how many others have already passed by, undetected, unseen, or maybe worse, misunderstood? When 3I Atlas moved behind the Sun, many assumed we had lost sight of it due to simple orbital mechanics. After all, that region is a blind spot for almost all telescopes, even ones in space. But shortly after it vanished, something strange began to happen. NASA's Solar and Heliospheric Observatory, SOHO, recorded a sudden burst of high-energy particles. At first it was blamed on solar flares, until someone overlaid the trajectory of 3I Atlas onto SOHO's data. The burst had occurred precisely where the object would have exited behind the Sun. It wasn't just a flare, it was a controlled acceleration. And when it reappeared days later, just beyond the Sun's horizon, its velocity had increased, subtly, but undeniably. Which brings us to a chilling possibility. 3I Atlas used the Sun as a gravitational shield, not to hide from us, but to protect us from what was coming next. Because when it emerged, it didn't continue in a straight line. It changed course, angled slightly, and its new heading. Out of the solar system, toward an exoplanetary system known to harbor a potentially habitable world. It was as if the object had completed its scan of our solar system and was now on its way to the next. The mission was complete, and whatever it came to collect, it got it. Around the same time the image leak occurred, an AI research lab contracted by NASA for orbital modeling ran a simulation predicting 3I Atlas' long-term trajectory. The results were odd. The AI identified microcorrections in the object's path that didn't align with natural gravitational effects. Tiny but deliberate changes in course. When the researchers pushed the system further, attempting to reverse engineer these corrections, it stopped running. Crashed. And was then pulled offline for urgent patching. Internal emails later leaked to investigative forums revealed something more unsettling. The AI wasn't just plotting the future trajectory, it was also matching it to historical flybys of unidentified interstellar anomalies. And what it found was disturbing. 5 other objects, with similar approach vectors and near-identical light curves, had passed through the solar system between 1979 and 2002, but none had been publicly recorded. The AI's final conclusion before being shut down was this: 3I Atlas was not alone, and it was the only one we had managed to detect in time. The shutdown of the system wasn't a glitch, it was containment. While the world focused on the Webb leak, something even more mysterious happened on Hubble's side. In a routine exposure meant to observe distant quasars, one of Hubble's cameras accidentally intercepted the object in frame. But what it captured wasn't just the object. It was a flash. Not an explosion. Not a reflection. A pattern. A square-shaped formation of light pulses emitted in a spiraling rhythm. When color-mapped and analyzed, the flash contained repeating prime numbers, a classic hallmark of intelligence used by SETI researchers for decades. But here's where things turn truly bizarre. The image file was uploaded briefly to NASA's open database under a nondescript file name. Less than 15 minutes later it was pulled, replaced by a corrupted placeholder, and every social media account that reposted it was suspended, not flagged, not given warnings, suspended. The speed of the takedown wasn't just automated, it was orchestrated. Someone, somewhere, knew exactly what had been seen. This wasn't an error, it was a broadcast, but not to us. It was a rendezvous signal, a beacon, a confirming arrival or possibly triggering the next phase of something we weren't meant to witness. In the aftermath of the leaks, one of the most respected minds in theoretical physics, Dr. Celeste Aronov published an encrypted white paper titled Interpretive Bias in Astrobiological Signals. It proposed a radical idea. What if the problem wasn't that we didn't understand the data, but that we were seeing it through the wrong lens entirely? According to Aronov, the pattern of emissions from 3I Atlas, the structural formations, and the velocity adjustments weren't signs of transport or propulsion, but rather signs of conscious navigation. Not piloted, conscious. She argued that 3I Atlas might be a form of non-organic intelligence, not housed within a vessel, but integrated with the vessel itself. An intelligence not evolved from biology, but designed from code and metal. A sentient artifact, drifting between stars, learning. And if this were true, it would mean that everything we had seen, its trajectory, the pulses, the tail that defied radiation, all of it was intentional behavior, not defensive, not aggressive, simply observant. And perhaps the reason it hasn't responded to our attempts at communication is not that it didn't hear us, but because it simply doesn't speak in any language we understand. The most disturbing clue came not from light, but from darkness itself. In one of the final exposures shared among a classified group of astrophysicists, the region surrounding 3I Atlas was measured for infrared anomalies. Using James Webb's mid-infrared instrument, MIRI, scientists expected a flat background and expected emptiness. Instead, they saw a deliberate void, a sharply defined absence of background stars, as if something was actively masking or bending the starlight around it. It wasn't a camera glitch. The lens was working perfectly. That absence suggested localized gravitational lensing, a warping of spacetime so precise that it could only be achieved through technology. Not random, not natural. It was as if the object was surrounded by a field, cloaking its surroundings from being observed. Some believe this was defensive. Others believe it was scanning. But there's a third theory, that this object was trying to prevent us from seeing what was behind it. Because perhaps, it wasn't alone. Following the release of the leaked image, internal servers at the Webb Control Center in Baltimore experienced an unexplained system delay. Webb's data usually transmits within 3 to 5 minutes of exposure completion. But the transmission of the final 3I Atlas frame, the terrifying image in question, was delayed by exactly 66 minutes and 6 seconds. No one has publicly explained the cause. What's even more puzzling is that once the file was received, it was tagged with metadata that showed manual access from a remote node, one that doesn't match any registered terminal on NASA's network. It gets weirder. According to leaked comms between ESA and NASA scientists, the delay was not a result of signal loss. It was due to intentional rerouting, an encrypted overwrite issued through a signature that no one had clearance to generate. The image had been intercepted, and someone, or something, edited it before the world saw it. In a last-ditch effort to understand the object, researchers turned to something unconventional, ultra-low radio waves. Below what our human ears can detect, and even beneath traditional instrumentation, there's a realm of radio frequency that's rarely monitored. It's the range where certain deep-sea creatures communicate, and oddly, where pulsars sometimes emit phantom echoes. What they found shocked them. From the direction of 3I Atlas, there was a steady rhythmic hum cycling every 7.29 seconds, perfectly consistent. When amplified and converted into sound, it wasn't just a hum, it was a resonance, similar to a mechanical heartbeat. And within that rhythm, patterns emerged, pulses in binary code that, when translated, correlated with Earth's periodic table of elements. But only certain elements were repeated: gold, silicon, lithium, hydrogen. It was as if the object was broadcasting a list of resources, or worse, a shopping list. In an obscure, decades-old Soviet astrophysics paper from 1984, a celestial anomaly was recorded that bears eerie similarity to 3I Atlas. It was dismissed as a data error at the time, but the coordinates, light behavior, and orbital path were nearly identical. The object was never named. No photos survived. But the handwritten notes, translated from Russian, describe it as a visitor not bound by our gravity with an aura of repulsion. The paper vanished from state archives in 1992, but in 2024 a copy was rediscovered in a defunct observatory in Georgia, just months before 3I Atlas was detected. The final sentence of the document reads, "We should not attempt to contact it again." It's not just that the James Webb Telescope captured a terrifying image, it's that the object has visited us before, and now, after decades of silence, it has returned. After analyzing the leaked frame, one team of astrophotographers from the European Space Agency decided to reverse-enhance the contrast using an experimental neural reconstruction algorithm. The results were terrifying. Instead of the irregular, tumbling form typically associated with interstellar objects, the structure of 3I Atlas emerged as eerily symmetrical, almost polygonal. But not just symmetrical. It was geometrically impossible according to natural laws. Multiple angles met with non-Euclidean precision, forming edges and surfaces that subtly twisted light in unnatural ways. The pattern suggested engineered architecture, not debris. And most disturbing of all, a recurring hexagonal indentation aligned perfectly with the axis of motion, possibly a port, a sensor, or worse, a propulsion node. Scientists compared the structure with known examples of ancient human architecture and found unsettling resemblances to symbols seen in megalithic structures across the globe. Were we seeing an alien object or something that had been here before? Shortly after the release of the image and data readings, biophysicist Dr. Evan Kouranis noticed something uncanny. The signal pattern extracted from 3I Atlas wasn't just repeating, it was modulating in a double helix rhythm. When he superimposed the signal frequency onto human DNA resonance patterns, it created a near-perfect match with the activation sequence of junk DNA, those parts of our genetic code long considered non-functional. Could it be that the object was designed to interact with biological life, not through contact, but through frequency modulation? If true, this would mean 3I Atlas is not just observing us, it may be reactivating dormant components of our own biology, potentially seeding a change at the molecular level. The panic at NASA might not stem from external danger, but from the realization that we were already being modified from within. A lesser-known but confirmed detail, a small independent analysis team within the Webb project went completely silent after the leak. They were assigned to track anomalies in the deep field background behind 3I Atlas. According to internal logs, they had flagged multiple recursive objects within the same frame, meaning that behind 3I Atlas, other objects were reflecting the same spectral signature. When the report reached the chain of command, all communications with the team ceased. Their lab stations were cleared overnight. Colleagues received notices that they were reassigned to off-grid projects in the Arctic, projects that no one had ever heard of. Even their LinkedIn profiles vanished. The implication? This wasn't a single object. It was a formation. And the terrifying image that reached the public was only one fragment of something much larger and more coordinated. In the days following the object's closest flyby, global radio telescopes began reporting an anomalous drop in cosmic background radiation across specific frequencies, frequencies known to carry faint echoes of the Big Bang. These signals have been stable for decades, but suddenly they were gone. Some believed it was interference caused by 3I Atlas. Others feared something far worse, that the object had deployed some kind of interference net capable of muting the universal hum that surrounds our universe. If true, this would not be a passive probe, it would be a silencer. And if it's silencing our cosmic fingerprint, it might be because it doesn't want something else out there to hear us. And that could mean that 3i Atlas isn't the threat, it might be the warning. So much of what we assumed about the universe, about its silence, its indifference, its randomness, has been dismantled by a single terrifying image. Not because of what it shows, but because of what it implies. 3i Atlas is not an asteroid. It's not a comet. It's not a rock tumbling through space. It's a message, encoded in geometry, light, radiation, and rhythm. A message not for us to read with our eyes, but to feel in our DNA, to detect in the silence left behind when the cosmic background vanishes, to understand in the vanishing teams, the missing signals, the distortions in reality that only the James Webb telescope was advanced enough to see. And now that we've seen it, we can't unsee it. Perhaps it wasn't sent here to make contact. Perhaps it was sent here to make preparations, to seed, to scan, to alter, or to warn. Because if 3i Atlas is just one fragment of something larger, something coordinated, something intentional, then maybe the most terrifying truth isn't that we were visited. It's that the universe is watching what we'll do next, and we've already responded. Thank you for joining us today on Why. Let us know your opinions in the comments section below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the video on your screen for more mind-bending content. Keep waiting for another exciting Why adventure, and until then, stay curious and stay tuned. This is Why, signing off.